We all grew up watching SpongeBob, the bright colors, the goofy laughs, and the silly underwater fun. But what if I told you there are episodes so creepy they gave us nightmares as kids? And even now, they still send chills down your spine. From SpongeBob hiding a dark secret to Squidward's haunting ordeal, today I'm diving into the creepiest, most unsettling SpongeBob episodes you never knew existed. If you think cartoons are all innocent, watch till the end. Let's start with I Was a Teenage Gary. In this episode, SpongeBob's innocent daycare duty for Gary turns into a bizarre horror story. Gary the snail is left under Squidward's care, but of course, Squidward is annoyed by the job. He neglects Gary all weekend. Squidward basks in the sun while Gary lies inside, neglected and weakening. When SpongeBob returns, he finds Gary limp and dying. The scene immediately takes a spooky turn. The local snail doctor, Dr. Gilliam, diagnoses the problem and insists on an immediate injection of snail serum to save Gary. SpongeBob freezes up from squeamishness, so Squidward, to their surprise, reluctantly steps in to do the injection. But in a frenzy of panic, Squidward accidentally administers the serum into SpongeBob instead of Gary by jabbing it right up SpongeBob's nose. Instant chaos follows. As SpongeBob panics, he literally begins to transform before our eyes. The cartoon turns unintentionally nightmarish. SpongeBob's eyes shoot out of their sockets, stretching grotesquely. His arms and legs melt into his flattened body, and even his mouth morphs. In SpongeBob's own words, he cries out, "Something is wrong with meow," as he loses the ability to speak normally, and his eyes tilt in snail fashion. By the end of this gruesome sequence, he's completely a gigantic snail version of himself. The visuals are surprisingly dark. Picture SpongeBob's eyes bulging and popping like balloons, and his spongy body dripping down, all over a goofy Nickelodeon background. It's a bit like a horror movie scene in a kid's cartoon, and the contrast is eerie. Meanwhile, Squidward freaks out at what he's done. Panicking at the sight of a snail SpongeBob slithering at him, Squidward tries to barricade himself inside his house, and even blocks the doors and windows. But the snail-shaped SpongeBob is unstoppable. In the frenzy of the chase, Squidward ironically injects himself with the leftover snail serum, and he becomes a snail too. Now we have both SpongeBob and Squidward turned into giant snails, meowing and crawling around. It's creepy and funny at the same time. The image of a snail Squidward getting knocked off a fence is absurd, but you're left with the memory of the unsettling transformation scene. And the most disturbing part is the rumor that some people believe there was a deleted cutscene where Squidward also turns into a snail, just like SpongeBob. Imagine that scene, Squidward transforming into a snail. Some fans point out that during the episode, when Squidward accidentally injects himself, there's an unusual transition that doesn't match the typical bubble transitions seen in SpongeBob. Because of this odd transition, many speculate that the original scene showing Squidward turning into a snail was removed for being too creepy. Just imagine watching that as a kid. It would have been pretty unsettling. Moving on, next up is Ghost Host. The spookiness here comes straight from a classic haunted visit setup. Late one foggy night, the Flying Dutchman's ship crashes on a rock. With no way to keep sailing, the old ghost captain basically demands a place to stay until his ship is fixed. So he sets up camp right inside SpongeBob's pineapple house. From that moment on, the Dutchman takes full pleasure in terrorizing our favorite fry cook. He frightens SpongeBob with creepy, grotesque faces, like snakes slithering out of his mouth. SpongeBob hears disembodied voices echoing through the pineapple, and then watches in horror as his home bursts into flames and comes alive like a haunted mansion. Terrified, SpongeBob bolts to Squidward's house for help and starts knocking on the door. But when Squidward opens it, SpongeBob panics so hard he keeps knocking. Right on Squidward's face. Yeah, he's smacking Squidward's face like it's a door knocker, completely unaware that Squidward is standing there. It's a quick, funny bit, but the way Squidward's face gets smooshed against the door? Honestly, it's kind of unsettling, like slapstick crossed with a weird nightmare. Squidward, who doesn't believe in ghosts, slams the door on all the ghostly chaos. Desperate, SpongeBob runs to Patrick for help, but Patrick just squeals and hides. So SpongeBob is left alone, wide-eyed and terrified, as the ghost creeps silently around and pops out with sudden jump scares. The creepiest trick in Ghost Host is when the Flying Dutchman sets SpongeBob up with a fake out involving Gary. At one point, the Dutchman calls out to SpongeBob and spins a little story. He pretends he just wanted to pet Gary, then suddenly, eats him. SpongeBob finds Gary lying limp. The snail appears dead, and he's utterly horrified. That is pretty dark. SpongeBob despairs, crying over Gary's death. For a beat, it feels like a genuine tragedy you'd expect in a creepy cartoon. Of course, it turns out to be a ruse. Gary reappears moments later, cartoon fashion. But for that heartbeat, it plays like an underwater horror flick. Later, when SpongeBob tries to sleep, the Dutchman messes with him again, this time turning his legs into writhing octopus tentacles. Imagine trying to sleep while your legs are twisting and curling on their own. SpongeBob's terrified scream feels real, like body horror disguised as cartoon comedy. And don't forget the jump scares. They look disturbingly eerie for kids. But the absolute creepiest part? When SpongeBob stops reacting to the scares, the Dutchman cranks it up to 11. He morphs into a parade of nightmare creatures. Giant ants, creepy worms, even a smoking disembodied head. And then the worst, he turns into SpongeBob himself, but the transformation glitches horribly. An eyeball pops out, a tongue falls to the floor, and spiders pour out of his mouth and crawl over his face. That scene? It's straight up grotesque and nightmarish, something you wouldn't expect in a show that's mostly silly and bright. So, by this point, literally no one in Bikini Bottom is even blinking at the scares anymore. But SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, comes up with this genius plan. Hey, why not scare the one guy who still doesn't believe in ghosts? Yep, that's right, Squidward. So the Flying Dutchman sneaks over to Squidward's place and tries this absolutely wild move. He shows up disguised as Squidward's grandma, all sweet and innocent at first, but then out of nowhere he melts into this slimy green puddle and, get this, turns into Squidward's flute. I mean, a loving grandma transforming into a disgusting flute? That's some next-level creepy psychological horror in a kid's cartoon. Squidward? Still not buying it. So the Dutchman doubles down, going full-on nightmare mode with the same gross-out transformations, eyeballs popping out, tongues flapping around, and spiders crawling all over the place. And finally, Squidward just loses it. He screams, okay, ghosts are real. It's a satisfying twist. The eternal skeptic finally gets his true fright. At the end, the Flying Dutchman's ship is fixed, and he prepares to leave. Before he goes, he leaves SpongeBob a present. The moment is framed ominously. SpongeBob rips it open, and suddenly the gift eats him. SpongeBob laughs it off as a dark little joke, even though he's basically devoured by a living toy. It's a creepy punchline. The ghost's thank you turns into a mini horror gag. So Ghost Host builds its creepy vibe through classic ghost tricks, haunted house antics and fake scares, and then flips it with macabre humor at the end. So yeah, Ghost Host isn't just a silly ghost story. It's packed with body horror, note psychological scares, and visuals that genuinely disturb, which makes it one of SpongeBob's creepiest episodes. If you watch it as an adult, you can't help but appreciate how bold and unsettling it really is. Now let's talk about Nasty Patty. This episode is set on a dark, stormy night in Bikini Bottom. Picture thunder cracking, lightning flashing, and that eerie background music creeping in. It starts off harmless enough. A supposed health inspector drops by the Krusty Krab. But then, bam, a news report interrupts the scene, warning that fake health inspectors have been scamming restaurants. Mr. Rest Krabs immediately panics. He's convinced this guy is just another fraud looking for a free meal. So in classic Krabs fashion, he hatches a plan. He tells SpongeBob to cook the inspector the works, but not in a good way. They whip up the Nasty Patty, a revolting burger loaded with explosive hot sauce, weird unwashed veggies, seahorse radish, and even a dip in toilet water. Yep, toilet water. It's pure cartoon gross-out humor, but you can already feel this prank is about to spiral into something way darker. Then it happens. Just as the inspector is about to take a bite, a fly zooms into his mouth. He starts choking, collapses, and smacks his head on the floor, completely knocking himself out. Here's the twist. He hasn't even taken a bite yet. But Krabs and SpongeBob are too busy laughing to notice anything's really wrong. That's when the TV interrupts again, revealing that the fake inspector had already been caught somewhere else. Which means the man lying on their floor is the real inspector. And in their minds, they've just killed him. Suddenly, the laughter dies. SpongeBob's wide-eyed, "Oh no, Mr. Krabs, do you realize what we've done?" And this is where things get disturbingly dark, especially for a kid's cartoon. Mr. Krabs, worried about going to jail and ruining his reputation, decides the solution is to hide the body. That's right, SpongeBob and Krabs literally try to dispose of what they think is a corpse. In the pouring rain, they drag the body up a lonely hill, ready to bury it for good. Only one tiny detail. The inspector isn't dead. He groans, stirs, and whack! A stone to the head knocks him out cold again. Without realizing it, they've just buried someone alive. On their way back, the night takes an even darker turn. They run into a pair of police officers. And just when you think this scene can't get more twisted, the storm kicks up a mudslide. The dirt washes away, and the corpse slowly slides out of the grave like something straight out of a horror movie, right in front of their eyes. Both of them freeze, panicking, hearts pounding. But by some miracle, the cops don't notice. Thinking fast, Mr. Krabs shoves the still-breathing inspector into the trunk of the police car and, without missing a beat, looks the officers dead in the eye and says, "Oh, it's just a shovel." Back at the Krusty Krab, they try to stash the body in the freezer while Krabs distracts the officers. SpongeBob tries sneaking in from the back, but it's locked, so he awkwardly strolls through the front door, dragging the body behind him. Then one officer casually asks for a soda. No big deal, right? Except Krabs makes the rookie mistake of serving it without ice. So now, the officer heads into the kitchen to grab some. Krabs and SpongeBob freak out, desperately trying to block the freezer. The cop jokes, "What's wrong with you two? Acting like you've committed a murder or something." She says it playfully, but they take it literally, thinking the cops know everything. They immediately start blaming each other for the crime, right there in front of the police. It's wild. Two characters in a kid's cartoon basically confessing to attempted murder. Eventually, the freezer is opened, and it's empty. The cops think it's all just a weird prank. But then the final twist hits. One officer half jokes, maybe he became a zombie and walked off. And wouldn't you know it, the inspector walks in, very much alive but dazed. The cops mistake him for a monster and actually start attacking him before realizing he's fine. The episode ends with everyone looking shocked, SpongeBob sighing in relief, and the narrator calling them all idiots. Why this is so creepy for a kids show? You've got accidental choking, mistaken death, grave digging, hiding a body, and even lying to the police, all in one episode. Sure, it's wrapped in goofy SpongeBob humor, but the core plot is straight out of a dark crime comedy. The fact that this aired on a cartoon aimed at kids makes it even more unsettling, because under all the slapstick, you're basically watching a murder cover-up gone horribly wrong. The Great Snail Race. Everything plays like a whimsical competition, but there's a twisted undercurrent that feels like outright cruelty, animal or pet abuse hidden in cartoon colors. While on the surface it's silly, the tone here pushes you into uncomfortable territory. It all revolves around a snail race in Bikini Bottom. Squidward gets a fancy purebred snail named Snelly in the mail, expecting her to win easily. When SpongeBob overhears Squidward bragging, he retaliates, entering Gary into the race to teach humility. Patrick even brings a rock he calls Rocky. Sounds innocent enough, but the darkness starts here. SpongeBob begins training Gary with a protein shake called Strongman Powder, even going so far as to slip sharp pins into it, turning the mix into something cruel and dangerous. Gary's discomfort is obvious, but SpongeBob ignores it. The concoction is ridiculous and clearly unsuited for a snail, yet he forces it on him anyway. He pushes poor Gary mercilessly for days, never letting him rest or sleep, driving him to utter exhaustion. By race day, Gary is so drained he can barely start. When the race finally begins, what follows is nightmarish. His body catastrophically unravels. His eyes swell insanely large and pop like balloons, splatting on the track. Then his shell cracks open with a violent explosion. He spins uncontrollably, as if his body was a car engine erupting. He careens into a wall, bursts into flames, and firefighters charge in to quell the blaze. When the smoke clears, only a charred shell and a snail body missing its eyes remain. It's disturbingly graphic, like a crash replay, only it's your pet snail. Even though it's played for laughs, it's horrific. Snail guts. SpongeBob finally realizes the horror of what he's done and, horrified, rushes to Gary in tears, apologizing for pushing him too hard. The announcer calls it an automatic disqualification. SpongeBob has crossed a line. Oddly, the tone shifts again. Snelly, who's near the finish, stops, drawn by Gary's agony. She abandons the race to comfort him, and hilariously and creepily, they fall in love instantaneously. Gary begins to recover, though he's left with a strange blank stare. Then Patrick's inanimate rock, Rocky, somehow wins the race in the chaos. Patrick gives Squidward the trophy, engraved Tortellini, because he figures it's the kind thing to do. Everyone laughs. It ends on a bizarre comedic note, but you've just witnessed a snail tortured to the brink of incineration. Fans see it too. Many describe SpongeBob's treatment of Gary as torture and Gary abuse. One comment puts it bluntly, because SpongeBob committed animal abuse. Most people seem to dislike the episode because it makes SpongeBob incredibly unlikable, who essentially tortures Gary for the titular snail race. When you watch this episode through that lens, creepy, unsettling, and deeply unnerving, it stops being about goofy competition and becomes a dark satire of pet abuse wrapped in pastel animation. Finally, SpongeBob in Random Land. This one takes us straight into a bizarre, nightmare-like realm where nothing makes sense. SpongeBob and Squidward get stuck delivering a Krabby Patty to this weird place called Random Land. Mr. Krabs is all for it, not because it's safe, but because he's too greedy to pass up the money. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of how over-the-top and ridiculous SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs act here. It feels so far removed from the characters we grew up with, and in most episodes, they don't behave quite like this. But that's just my take. Once they arrive, the weirdness hits right away. They wander around aimlessly, dancing for no reason. Suddenly, SpongeBob's entire body vanishes, leaving only his grass skirt. Then Squidward dances, and poof, he's gone too. Imagine being nothing but a floating hula skirt. Eventually, they slide down a mountain and land in a strange little town. But the creepiest part? They find this wall of doors. Squidward starts opening them, and each one shows a warped, unsettling version of himself. One door looks like his bedroom, until the walls glitch into static, and out of nowhere, we see it. Squidward's face with glowing red eyes and black tears streaking down his cheeks. It's the infamous Red Mist Squidward from the creepypasta Squidward's Suicide. For a moment, it feels like a straight-up horror short. Static crackles, the demon-like Squidward stares right at you, and Squidward slams the door shut in panic. Blink and you'll miss it, but if you know the reference, it's chilling. And the show even winks at fans. The background music is literally labeled Red Mist Q, and the storyboard artist admitted it was a deliberate nod to the creepy fan story. Nickelodeon's reaction was pretty telling. In later airings, they edited out the Red Mist scene entirely. Instead, they replaced it with a baby Squidward image, still weird, but a lot less intense. Some fans still find the baby version creepy in its own way. Tiny baby head on Squidward's body, nightmare fuel of a different kind. Aside from that, Random Land is packed with surreal, nonsensical visuals. Upside-down houses, bizarre dancing creatures, roads that break the laws of physics, floors that suddenly turn into walls. But the moment everyone remembers is that red mist door. It's a rare example of SpongeBob dipping its toes into pure horror, even if only for a few seconds. And that's our deep dive into some of SpongeBob's creepiest, weirdest, and most unexpectedly dark moments. Now I want to hear from you. Which scene stuck with you the most? Was it the snail transformation, the nasty patty burial, or maybe that blink and you miss it Red Mist Squidward cameo? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'm reading them all. If you got a chill, a laugh, or just a big dose of nostalgia from this video, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more cartoon deep dives and strange animation secrets, make sure you're subscribed with the bell on so you never miss what's next. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.